Hallo und willkommen zurück in der Deutschklasse. Ich bin Ihr Professor, Herr Dr. Professor Michael Hughes, und wir lernen hier heute bei Cal State San Marcos. Der Zweck unseres Videos heute ist, von Subjekt und Objekt oder Nominativ und Akkusativ zu sprechen. Hello, welcome back to German class. I am your professor, Dr. Michael Hughes. We're learning here at Cal State San Marcos, and the purpose of this video is to talk about subject and object pronouns and nominative accusative case in German. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by talking about nouns and noun phrases. You know what nouns are. Nouns are things, right? And the nouns can be tangible things like rocks, cars, trees, pizzas, rabbits, and liverwurst, your favorite. And nouns can be intangible things, and nouns can be people and places too, right? So students, universities, nurses, etc. We can tell, in addition to knowing that things are things, right? We can also look at what the nouns co-occur with to help us decide if it's a noun. So if it shows up with an, or some, those are indefinite articles. I'd like to eat some liverwurst, please. Or it can be a definite article like the liverwurst on the table smells wonderful. And it can be a demonstrative, something like this, that, these, and those, that liverwurst over there is just waiting to be gobbled up by us. And then you can pluralize lots of nouns, right? So there's some nouns that don't pluralize easily. Those are count noun or non-count nouns, excuse me, but most of them pluralize with s, right? So the sausages, the dog, the dogs, the hope, the hopes, etc. Um, Okay, there's some more examples for you. And then we have lots of nouns, right, that are that have a strange plural in English. German has all of these different forms. You just have to learn the German plurals, right? They don't end in s in German, right? But you have, right, one fish, two fish, one moose, two moose. Um, one mouse, two mice, one goose, two geese, one ox, two oxen, one child, two children, one woman, two women, and one man, two men. Okay, noun phrases, though, are kind of the key unit, right? So the noun is sort of the basic building block, but it's not common that you just get a noun as a subject or an object, right? You don't say man build fire, right? You have to say the man, built a fire or something like that, right? So we're sticking with noun phrases, but they can be, depending on the noun, just one noun, right? Students study hard. These students study hard. These curious students study hard. These various curious students study hard, right? All of these are noun phrases. These are all chunks, and I'm just adding units to it, right? So these very curious students from CSUSM enjoy studying German. These very curious students from CSUSM who enjoy eating liverwurst also study German, right? And those are all noun phrases. And there you are, potentially on the beach in San Diego or in Oceanside eating your liverwurst sandwiches. All of these photos from now on are going to be generated by ChatGPT. Sorry about that. I just felt like playing around with it, and I have to do it anyway. So your bad luck. Right, and then pronouns don't just replace nouns. Pronouns replace entire noun phrases, right? So I don't say these very curious they from CSUSM who enjoy eating liverwurst have to replace the entire noun phrase. These very curious students from CSUM who enjoy eating liverwurst gets replaced by just the word they, right? And that's what pronouns are for, right? They make our speech a lot more efficient and just help us track what's going on, who's doing what to whom. Okay, to have a sentence, right, you need a subject and a predicate, right? So a noun phrase that's doing something, and then the thing that it's doing. And verbs, as you again are probably aware, this is a review, refer to actions and states of being, right? So actions are things like run, jump, read, make, study, drive, sleep, eat, and play chess in front of the Brandenburger Tor in your CSUSM regalia. Um, but they can also be states, right? So states are things like to be, right? So you're not actually, right, in states you're not actually making much of an effort to do anything, right? You're just there, and this is true of you, right? So be, resemble, believe, know, and exist, right? Those are all things that you don't have to do very much to actually meet the qualifications for fitting that definition. Verbs can have one, two, or three participants, right? And these are different classes of verbs. Some verbs can go back and forth into different classes depending on the context, right? So verbs like sleep, smile, laugh, run, be, those are all typically one participant verbs, right? There's only one person doing the action, and they're not doing the action to somebody else. They're just doing the action, right? You don't smile somebody. You might smile at somebody or with somebody or towards somebody, but those are all prepositional phrases. Those are not arguments. Right, there's just one participant in the sleeping event, right? And that makes it an intransitive verb. Right, notice again, you don't sleep the bed. You can sleep on the bed, under the bed, around the bed, over the bed, whatever, but you can't just sleep the bed, right? You have to, if you want to say more about the sleeping event, you have to add prepositional phrases and not just noun phrases. You have other verbs that are two participant verbs, so things like eat, drink, hug, build, study, or bury. Now, some of these, again, might go back and forth depending on the context, right? You might ask a person, "Did you eat yet?" Or have you, what did? But most of the time, right? You eat something, you drink something, you hug somebody, you build something, you study something, you bury a treasure chest or something like that, right? And when I say participant, of course, it can be any old thing, right? So participant one is the eater, and the participant two in this case is the thing eaten, and that's a transitive verb. And then there's a very small case set of verbs that are three participant verbs, things like give, show, throw, loan, read. You can read, like read can either be two or three people, right? You can read a book. That's you in the book. Those are the two participants. Or you can read your nephew or your niece a book, right? And then you have three participants. You have the reader, the book, and then the recipient of the reading event, right? Your nephew or your niece or your kid if you have one. Right. So here's an example of throw, right? Throw, again, you can just throw the ball. Then it's a two participant verb. But if you throw the ball to somebody, you throw somebody the ball, that's a three participant verb, right? The thrower, the thing thrown is the object, and then the recipient is the indirect object. Right? The thing that's acted on is always just the basic object of the verb. And this is a ditransitive verb, right? Because there's two parts or two people on the other side of the verb. Right? Verbs typically in German and in English tend to show up in the second spot. In German, it's much more strict. In English, it's a pretty good guess, though. Okay, so grammatical roles. So verbs have, right, for one participant verbs, two participant verbs, three participant verbs, they have these roles that they can give away, right? And the subject is one of those roles. The subject is the person or the thing. Typically, it's a person, but it can be a thing. Does the action. It could be an animal also, right? The raccoon ate or what? You go to the beach, the seagull ate my potato chips, something like that, right? The subject also controls the conjugation, which is harder to see in English, but you can see it, and a lot more common in other languages. If you speak Spanish or obviously German, French, things like that, those all have more verbs with lots of conjugations. It's the subject that controls that conjugation, right? The subject and the verb agree. Right? And in German and in English, the subject precedes the verb. Right. So, for instance, the pirate buries the chest. Notice the well, both of these are single, right? But the pirate, since it's singular, is going to cause the verb to have the s at the end. Right. What if we have more than one pirate? Well, then the s goes away, right? And so the verb changes based on um, the subject of it, right? And we notice the chest hasn't changed, right? So the change in this verb can't be attributable to the thing that comes after the verb. It's the thing that comes in front of the verb that does it, right? So again, the subject controls the conjugation on the verb. English doesn't have a lot of conjugations. That's the only place you're going to see it, but you get the idea, right? Oh, look, there are pirates. Sorry, I should have put that earlier. Okay, and then the object is the thing that you're acting on, right? And in this case, right, we have the pirates are burying the treasure chest. The treasure chest is the object, right? Or the student kicks the rock, right? So the object is the thing that's being acted on. In this case, the treasure chest. In this case, the rock, right? He's angry at that rock for some reason. I'm not sure. Right, and typically it follows the verb, right? So the student kicks the rock, right? Which most languages do it that way, like maybe 50% of languages do it that way. Other languages, you can have it in a different order if you speak Japanese or something like that, but we don't. We're not learning that, so we're not going to worry about it. And then the object is grammatically inert in the sense that it doesn't have any effect on the verb or any other of the um, or anything else. Let's just leave it that. Well, I guess it could be this versus these, but that doesn't matter. Not for us, right? And then we have this other thing called the indirect object. We're not really going to spend a lot of time worrying about indirect objects today. They're going to continue to show up. In German, it's the dative case. We're going to talk about that later. I'm going to keep it. I'll bring it up a couple more times, but we're not going to talk about it. You don't need to know about it now, right? So in this case, right, the student gives his friend a present, right? The present is the right, so the student is the giver, and the thing that he's given is our object, and then he's given it to somebody. So he gives his friend a present, or he gives a present to his friend, and that's our indirect object over there. Right? Prepositions also have objects. Prepositions are things like in, on, around, for, over, under, by, with, through, out of, to, right, out of, for instance, is a compound preposition. We have lots of those. And we have tons of those prepositions in English, lots of them in German too. They're a little bit more complicated in German, but and these are always followed by noun phrases as well, right? So under the table, on the table, out of the belfry, to your German class, etc. Right? Those to, out of, on, those are all prepositions and they all get cases. We're going to need to learn them in German because some German prepositions require accusative and some require dative, but we're not worried about that today. We're just worried about getting the ideas down. Okay. Here are our personal pronouns in English, right? Right now, mostly we've only talked about third person, but right, if you want to talk about yourself, you don't have to say, I don't have to say, Professor Hughes thinks this. I can say, I think this, right? You don't have to say that, you think that, or that, add your name all the time. You can just use I, right? And the person you're talking to, you don't have to say their name all the time. You can use you. Um, and you know how these work, right? You'll notice in these cases where there's different colors, it's the same pronoun in both the subject and the object, subjective and objective case. In principle, in English, because we rely so heavily on word order in English, we don't really need two sets. We could just pick the object or the subject set and use that for everything, right? And it would still be clear. It sounds like if you do it like, just take the objects, it sounds like kind of caveman speak. But you understand it, and it could be done. I'm not saying we should do it. Just saying, we rely so much on word order that changing the pronouns doesn't matter that much. Then we also have these reflexive pronouns. Reflexive is when the subject and the object are the same thing, right? So if I see myself in the mirror, you see yourself in the mirror. I don't say I see me, yeah, you see you. He sees he or he sees him, right? We have these special pronouns that indicate that it's the same subject and object. We'll talk about those briefly in a minute. They're easy in English. They're not too hard in German, but I'll show you how they work. Right, so again, subject versus object. In this case, right, he is the one doing the action. I mean, presumably she can see, right, but we're not talking about her. We're talking about him. That's why he's the subject. He comes first, he sees her. But we can switch it around, right, and we can make it she sees him, and we can see, right, that whether it's masculine or feminine, it's different whether it's the subject or the object. Right, that's what the pronouns do. They switch, and they tell us that. Again, do we need to have that? No, we don't need to have that. I could just as easily say he sees she and she sees he, or her sees him. Right? You would get it if like someone who wasn't real good at English or was just learning English said that, and you could do it that way in some English prime, right, or some version of English that's a lot like this English. That's not. Okay, so in German, right, or in English, we call the things that go into subject subjective. In German, those are called nominative, right? That goes back to Latin grammar. They're just Latin words, and it just means subject, right? Accusative just means object, right? And you can see accusative, right? Je t'accuse, right? You're the downstream participant, right? Somebody's accusing you of something. And then the indirect object is the dative case. Again, we're not going to worry about the dative case right now, but you've seen it, right? So you've seen ich and you've seen mich. And then you see mir geht es gut, wie geht es dir? That mir and dir, those are examples of the indirect object or the dative case. And that usually means to somebody, right? We've seen that before, the recipient. Right? And then the object of a preposition in German might be dative or it might be accusative. I'm not talking about that today, but I'm just letting you know it's coming down the road. Okay, what do the German personal pronouns look like? Right, so again, first person, second person, third person, singular, plural. We have this extra form down here, which is the formal form, I guess we can call it, the informal or unfamiliar form, maybe. Right, and you know these, right? So the nominative, right, the subject pronouns ich, du, er, es, sie, wir, ihr, sie, and sie, right? So sie not capitalized means they, sie capitalized means you, sir, or ma'am. And again, just like English, there are some instances where it's the same in the nominative and in the accusative. Otherwise, right, you're familiar with this mich, dich, ihn, which you probably forget because it's kind of weird and out there. Es, sie, uns, and euch. Right, euch means y'all. Ihr is y'all, and that means the object y'all. And then these are the dative ones, and you don't need to study these right now. Mir, dir, ihm, for both, right? So it's the same for masculine and neuter. Ihr, uns, euch, ihnen, right? Euch again is y'all. Right? And then our reflexive pronouns, which look a whole lot like the accusative, except for in the third person, right? In the third person, it all just defaults to sich. So with reflexives, we don't have to worry about gender. It's not masculine, feminine, or neuter. It's just sich, right? Okay, so we'll see that in a little bit. All right, subject and object in German, right? So ich sehe dich, right? Ich is the blue hat and dich is the green hat, corresponding with at least the underlines here. right? So I see you. I don't say is the du, right? Du is going to be the subject. Dich is the object. Dich, you're the one being seen. Let's imagine you're the guy in the green hat or the lady in the green hat. We can't tell. They're stick folks. Who cares, right? And then alternatively, right, if it's the other person, if I want to say you see me, right? Du siehst mich, right? And again, the pronouns change depending on where they are in the sentence. The verb comes second. The subject typically comes first. Und ihr seht uns, you all see us. And I'm just imagining us as being a little sausage marching band on their way to perfect German. Okay, some more examples. Wir begrüßen Sie. Now, what does this mean? It means we greet Sie. This could mean we. It's not capitalized, so it doesn't mean we don't. Right? It could be she or it could be they. We don't really know until we know the picture, and we say aha. Right? So wir begrüßen Sie. We're saying hello to her. Right? Sie begrüßt uns. She says hello to us. Right? Or she greets us. Right? Wir begrüßen ihn. Ihn, remember, is him in German. So, right, we say hi to him, and he says hi to us, or he greets us. Servus, right, and he's greeting us, right? So, us is not wir, right? So, wir, if it's a subject, uns, if it's the object. Some more examples. Wir treffen euch. So, we meet y'all, right? Sie umarmt ihn. Well, okay, we don't know who's hugging whom, but let's just assume in the first case she's hugging him. Sie umarmt ihn. Arm, right? Arm means arm, so she inarms him. That's how you would say that in German. Sie umarmt ihn. Ihn is he, right? Er umarmt sie, right? He hugs her, right? Because again, sie either means she or her, depending on where it is in the sentence. Sie kauft es. She's buying it, right? Here's our it. That's the thing that she's buying. Er verkauft es, right? So it, again, as the object, is just it, right? Just like English, it is the same in both subject and object. Kaufen is to buy, verkaufen is to sell. Oh, and he's shocked that they're eating sausages. Those are not plant-based sausages, I'm sure. Yeah, it's just, right? Y'all are eating sausages. Again, there's that yeah, right? Y'all are eating them, right? Again, the Z doesn't change if it's the object of the sentence. So y'all are eating them. We can't tell if this means you're eating she, which would be die Wurst, right? Is feminine, or if it's the sausages. But here, because we see the picture, we know it's more than one sausage. Okay, here's our reflexive verbs. So we're going to talk quickly about the reflexives, and these are ones, if you look them up in a dictionary, typically start with sich, although lots of times they'll just have the verb and then they'll put reflexive, R-E-F-L, right, next to the verbs, and then you know that that's what's going on, right? Sich this is always just the third person, right? Remember, so sich means he, she, it, sorry, himself, herself, itself, themselves, and you, sir, madam, yourself, right? Sich anziehen. So let's pronounce them. Sich anziehen, anziehen, right, is to put on. Sich ärgern, right? Ärger, right? You can see that comes from anger, right? Or close to anger, right? To get angry. Sich aufregen, to get upset or to get worked up, to get excited about something. Sich ausruhen is to chill. Ruhe means quiet. Ausruhen, right? We're not pronouncing that H, we're just making that U longer. Ausziehen, to take off. Take off your sweater, or at the end of the day when you get home from work. Sich duschen, to shower. Sich entspannen. Spannen means to put tension on something. Ent means to take away, so it's removing tension, right, or relax. Sich freuen is to get happy. Sich kämen is to comb yourself. Sich langweilen, lang, right, means long, weile means while, so it's just to long while yourself, right, to get bored. Sich rasieren, rasieren, to shave yourself. Sich schminken, to put on makeup, to make yourself up. Sich umziehen, to change clothes, right? Maybe you get home and you want to get into your workout outfit or something like that. Ich ziehe mich And sich waschen is to wash yourself. So let's see how these work. So let's see here. That's me. Haha. Can't you tell? Oh, I should have put hair on myself. Ich dusche mich, right? Ich dusche mich. I shower myself, right? And if it's you, du duscht dich. And if it's he, duscht sich, right? Here are some CSUSM students with nothing left to do. They've drank all their sodas and eaten all their pizza. So they might say to themselves, "Wir langweilen uns." We're bored with ourselves. Or I might comment about them. Sie langweilen sich, right? And I see the E, and that tells me that's probably going to be plural. Right? Sie langweilen sich. They're bored with themselves. Ihr langweilt euch. I'll tell them, hey, ihr langweilt euch. Y'all are getting bored. You should do something. Go outside. Put the phone down. Play frisbee or something. Sie schminken sich, right? Sie schminken is to put on makeup, so they're putting on makeup. If you're one of these clowns, wir schminken uns, right? We're making ourselves up, right? Sie rasiert sich. Right, and this just means, right, if I say sie rasiert sich, that just means she shaves herself, and it doesn't specify what part of her body is she shaving, her nose, her armpits, her leg, her hair, her head, whatever it is. You can clarify that by just adding that, right? Sie rasiert sich die Beine. In that case, this sich actually becomes dative case. We're not going to worry about that unless you're total grammar, in which case you just got happy. Okay. Right. Sie rasiert sich die Beine. She shaves herself the legs. She doesn't have to say ihre. We don't have to put a possessive here because it's already built into the way the verb works. Right. Der Professor zieht sich an. Right. He's getting dressed. Or he's putting the jacket on. If I need to specify that he's putting on the jacket, right? The sacco is just a sport coat. Zieht ein Sacco an. Right. He's putting on his sport coat. And here they're relaxing at the beach. The entspannen sich. If I'm talking to them, I might be walking down the beach and I see them. Ihr entspannt euch. Oh, you guys are just chilling. And they might say, hey, Professor, what are you guys doing? Oh, wir entspannen uns. Okay, super. And I'll just keep walking down the beach and leave you to your relaxation. Right. So these are reflexives, right? So again, reflexive means the subject to the left of the verb is the same as the object on the right of the verb, right? I shower myself. I mean, if you had a baby or a dog, right? You don't have doesn't have to be reflexive. You could shower your dog or wash. Ich wasche, probably you'd use waschen in that case, right? Ich wasche mein Hund, or maybe you're showering, you're showering your kid. You stick your kid under the shower. Ich dusche mein Baby, something like that, right? But how often does that come up? Okay, Zusammenfassung. Zusammen means together. Fassung means to bring it, right, to grab onto something. So the together grabbing, in English, the summary. Remember that noun phrases can either be subjects or objects in their phrases, not just the nouns, right? The nouns are things. Subjects do the verb, right? Whatever the verb is, run, jump, fly, fall, fail, pass, succeed. It's the subject that does it, right? And the object is the thing that's done to or acted on, right? If you throw a ball, the ball is the thing that moves. If you eat the pizza is the thing you're acting on. If you drive a car, etc., etc. Both subject and object noun phrases can be replaced by pronouns, which we've talked a lot about, right? Pronouns replace the whole noun phrase. And depending on whether it's the subject or the object, or whether the pronoun is replacing the subject or the object, it may look different, but it doesn't have to, right? So we've seen in both German and English, there's some pronouns that are the same in both the accusative and the nominative, or the subjective, the objective and subjective case, right? The subjects in German are called nominative case, and the objects are called accusative. Blame the Latins, don't blame me, but it's easy enough to remember. Right. Indirect objects, which we didn't really talk very much about, receive the object, right? They're the recipient. Typically, they're a person, right? So if I bake you a cake or I write you a love poem or whatever, right? If you're the beneficiary recipient, then you're an indirect object, grammatically speaking. Right? In German, these are typically dative case, but we're not going to worry about dative so much. We'll get to that another day. Right, and likewise, prepositions in, on, out, for, by, through, around, near. In English, typically are just objective, right? We only have two choices. In German, it'll take either accusative or dative object, but that's a conversation for another day. Don't worry, it'll be fun. We'll love it. Okay, any questions? You know how to get in touch with me, mhughes at csusm.edu, or message me through the Canvas messaging system. We'll be talking about all the stuff in class, so auf Wiedersehen.